To call the Chesapeake Sub to order. If we could take a quick attendance, please.
Buddy, you're here.
All right, a quorum is present. All right, so we'll go ahead and start with the agenda. I think we discussed my bill, House Bill 1804, at the last time, extensive testimony, and just to recap, the discussion is on trading credits for salt marsh, basically letting VMRC handle some of that. I think we discussed it. The discussion is on in freshwater, there's a 3-to-1 trading bank, and that will not work in saltwater. So what I'd like to do is go ahead and have a motion to send this through now, and the discussion I'm sure will keep ensuing. So if I could have a motion to pass it. All right, so a motion's been properly second to report House Bill 1804. If we could go to the voting board. All right, and
Can y'all see it on your screen?
yes. All right, the bill reports 5-3. All right, thank you. And this will go to House Bill, let's see, I think Delegate Rizul was here, House Bill 2189.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. House Bill 2189 has a substitute that I believe has been posted.
All right, we get a motion.
Move to adopt substitute.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. All right, so House Bill 2189, the substitute is before us, and I believe there's also a line amendment.
Yes, Mr. Chair, if we could strike Section C as an amendment to the substitute.
All right, that would be line 27, 28, and 29.
That's correct. Yes, Mr. Chair.
So moved. Second.
All right, so we have a properly before us. If we take everyone agree with striking C subsection. Everyone in favor say aye. Aye. All right, any opposed? All right, so the bill is properly before us. Delegate Rizul.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. This is a work product of, for many, many weeks, people coming together, various stakeholders, trying to do something about an unfortunate incident that has happened in the Roanoke area, where we had the release of these Gen X or PFAS chemicals into our drinking water reservoir. In September 15th, 2002, the Water Authority is quoted to have said we had to spend $13.5 million extra dollars to remove the toxin out of the Spring Hollow drinking water reservoir, which just so happens is my drinking water. What we have here, Mr. Chairman, is a product where we've been able to work with DEQ, the administration, stakeholders, and find a way to begin to say that these PFAS toxins will now have these pretreatment standards that will be adopted by the board as we move forward, very narrowly tailored to the industrial users, these industrial cleaners, to ensure that if they are taking anything that that if they're cleaning anything that has PFAS chemicals, that they are in fact testing for that and then transmitting those test results. So, Mr. Chairman, and happy to answer any questions, and I know people from the administration are here to speak in support of it as well.
All right, any questions for the patron? Yes, sir, Delegate Lopez.
Was it a single release? How did this happen in Spring Hollow, the reservoir?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Delegate Lopez. We believe that it's been happening for years. What we saw was some certain elevated testing in 2020, but then the Commonwealth this past summer had a concerted effort to try to figure out what was causing the elevated levels of the PFAS chemicals, and fortunately, the Commonwealth took it seriously and figured out where this was coming from and now we have a narrowly tailored solution to try to start to curb that.
All right, any other questions for the patron?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
apologize. Delegate Rasul, in subsection B, in regards to shall require any industrial user of a publicly owned, what is an industrial user?
So, Mr. Chairman, Delegate Weber, this is the best way to explain this is that there are firms, and their job is to clean these manufacturing parts for other companies. So, in this case, for example, what happened is that there was a manufacturer in West Virginia, and they contracted with a cleaner here in Virginia in Roanoke County, and then that cleaner unfortunately did not realize that there was this very toxic PFAS chemicals that were on this machinery, or else they said they wouldn't have even contracted to clean it. So they are the industrial users who then discharge after cleaning into the publicly owned treatment works, so our wastewater treatment facilities.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for the patron? All right, seeing none, I'm sure there are people to speak in favor of the bill.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee, Jennifer Wally, Deputy Secretary of Natural and Historic Resources. We are here before you today to strongly support the bill as amended. We have been working with the patron extensively over the last week or so and working with various stakeholders as we believe that this is an issue that we should be addressing. The bill as amended requires the pretreatment standards to require entities that clean or repair filtering equipment used in an off-site manufacturing process involving PFAS to test their discharges to their sewer. One of the things I think that's particularly of note is all 104 of the POTWs are already required to have a pretreatment program, and that this bill only applies to users of a sewer. So those who already have their own discharge permit are not currently affected. So, and again, we'd like to thank the patron as well as the other various stakeholders to get us here to this point. And we're happy to answer any questions that you all may have. We have our subject matter expert here as well. So thank you for your time.
All right, any questions? All right.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Chris Pomeroy, representing the Virginia Association of Municipal Wastewater Agencies. To begin, we support the bill. We appreciate the work that the patron has done on it to tailor it to the circumstance here. The introduced bill was much broader in some challenging ways, so we think it's an artful solution that gets right at the particular problem, which is a serious problem that occurred out in Roanoke. So we support the measure. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? We have one online in favor of. Ms. Madison? Is that
Yes, hello. Thank you, Tyler Madison. And yes, this is a wonderful bill that I think looks very narrow and appropriate, will protect people's health and move us forward as we deal with PFAS for the Sierra Club. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Pat Calvert, Virginia Conservation Network, is also in support of this bill.
All right. Anyone else in favor of the bill? Anyone like to speak against the bill?
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I'm not here to speak against. I'm here to tell you that on behalf of the Virginia Manufacturers Association, we're neutral at this point. We've had a number of good discussions with all the parties and seen progress on the language. There's a couple words that we're working on and are hopeful that we can come back with the patron and the others. I know the administration is committed to continue to talk with us. We're hopeful when we get to full committee, if there's a couple of word improvements that could be made, then we'll be on board. But right now, we don't oppose, we're neutral.
All right, thank you. Anyone else against the bill? I know this has been a work in progress for the last week or so with a lot of different people weighing in. And I know PFAS has been a big discussion at committee meetings. Yes, sir. Delegate Belva.
Yeah, thank you. Just making a brief comment to the bill. It is, as I guess the chairman mentioned, a huge emerging issue, and I think this is a case of an ounce of prevention is worth a pound or a ton of cure, quite honestly, in this particular case. And so, it's a matter of timing and making sure that we can detect problems early rather than later, because right now, you detect after it's gone through the system and you're finding it in the drinking water supply, in which case it's exponentially more costly to go ahead and deal with. And this just makes sure that we're pinpointing prevention at the actual point of discharge. And that's the right way to go ahead and do it for the environment, but I think it's also the most cost-efficient way of doing it for the environment. And Mr. Chairman, at the appropriate moment, I'd love to have a...
Yes, sir. Delegate Belva, if you could hold that for 1 second. Delegate Wilt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I don't know about anybody else, but I would welcome an education on PFAS. So I've tried to do a little bit of research and so forth, but just not getting very far. And Mr. Chairman, I mean, to me, the irony is, so we're addressing, and I'm not arguing that point, but just a week and a half ago in Commerce and Energy, we extended the presumption on cancers caused by PFAS for firefighters. And to further the irony, the firefighters' uniforms, the equipment that they wear, contain PFAS. And guess what? It gets released or whatever when it's hot. And so, I mean, and then I've heard testimony from somewhere, forgive me for not remembering, it was an expert, it was a chemist, and it may have been in that meeting, but apparently not all PFASs, if that's a word, are bad. I mean, I just don't know. And so I can appreciate where we're going with this, but I think at some juncture, at least for me, I'd really appreciate some kind of no harm to your bill, but
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, Delegate Wilt. Yeah, actually, this is one of 6,000 different chemicals that we generally put under this big umbrella of PFAS. Working with DEQ and some other professionals, what we have done in subsection A is to narrowly tailor what we define as a Commonwealth. So that way it's, number one, what we think is maybe most dangerous, but number two, what we can actually test for. And you're right, PFAS has been used many times extensively, and now we're realizing the dangers there. And while I remember that bill, while some of the equipment they've been able to replace, they said there's their equipment that's not replaceable that has PFAS, the firefighters, and they were concerned as well. So thank you for that.
All right, does that help Delegate Wilt with that? Or just confuse more?
I guess.
All right. And I will say that this will probably go through more changes as it goes through the process. Any other questions for the patron?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. Delegate Bolva.
Move to report the substitute as amended.
Second.
All right, so House Bill 2189, the substitute that has been amended, is before us. We'll go to the voting board. All right, I myself am going to vote no just to flag it to make sure that we continue working with the manufacturers to make sure that.
Well, I don't want you to be alone.
Thank you. Okay, the bill passes. Is it up here? All right, so we'll have staff just read out the bill passes 7-2, and if you could just read them.
Delegate Watson and Delegate Weber for noes. Delegate Wilt, Fowler, Runyon, Bulova, Lopez, Williams, Graves, and Fuller-Corn for yes.
All right, thank you, Delegate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
All right, I see Delegate Krizik is here. If you'd like to come up with your bill, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. HB 1977 directs the State Water Control Board to waive the expiration of a groundwater withdrawal permit for any well serving exclusively residential users north of the Occoquan River and located within 5 miles of any commercial or industrial permitted groundwater withdrawal. As you can tell, it's pretty narrowly tailored. There's only one community that qualifies, and that's the community of Toxmont with 116 homes, which is currently served by 3 water wells, which they have had for over 80, I think it's 82 years this October, which was decades before, or at least I think 16 years maybe is the correct number, before the County Water Authority started providing public water. So this waiver for the residential users would continue until the commercial or industrial withdrawals have been halted for 5 years, those within 5 miles, and that's just 2, and that's the Mount Vernon Estate and the Bellhaven Country Club. And it will be reviewed by the Department of Environmental Quality to assess the extent of stress relieved on the aquifer following termination of the commercial or industrial permitted water withdrawals. So as I've stated, this is really narrowly tailored for the groundwater withdrawal of the Toxmont Community Association, and it only affects entities north of the Occoquan River. And Toxmont is really a unique community. It doesn't have lawns, it doesn't have pools, they don't allow it. It's really not a very typical Northern Virginia suburb, and as you know, Virginia law requires that human consumption is a priority. So before, we use it for other kinds of purposes, industrial or otherwise, what it says here in the code is that when proposed uses of groundwater are in conflict or available supplies of groundwater are not sufficient to support all those who desire to use them, the department shall prioritize the evaluation of applications in the following manner. Number 1, applications for human consumption shall be given the highest priority. So I've got a few folks here to talk about it. I just want to let you know also that the Toxmont has been very good about conservation. Their withdrawal rates declined over the 20-year average from 8.24 million gallons now down to 7 million gallons. So they're doing a really good job of that. And there's some folks here from the community who've been, and it's all volunteer run. They've been running their own little water, they've got their own water program for the whole community of 114 households. It's really the only one back in up there in my neck of the woods. So I have John Culbertson, Rob Serval, and Glenda Booth here in person to testify.
All right, thank you, Dele. Any questions before we take any? Delegate Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Toxmont community is what, 116 residences?
Yeah, households. Plus, actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, asked the question, because it also includes there's also a nursery school too included.
All right, 116 residences, a nursing school, and it's a community that was developed in the 30s, and then it was completed in 1947, 10 years before the Fairfax County Water Authority was even created.
Yeah, at least 10 years. That's my understanding.
Right. And the code section says you have to prioritize residential use of drinking water before industrial or golf courses.
Correct.
Right. And so if you allow this bill to go forward, and you go after like sort of the sort of like the corporate or business uses of the golf courses first, that will actually allow the table to rise.
Well, there's that possibility, but this would not affect the golf courses or any commercial use at all. What this does is it gives them an extra 3 years. So right now, the community members can speak to this with more authority, but my understanding is their permit is coming up in a couple years, and the golf course comes up a couple years after that, or maybe it's the other way around. The golf course comes up in a couple years, then their permit comes up right after that. If they were given an extra 3 years, so 5 years from when the golf course permit comes up, and they would have the time to see if the aquifer replenished, and they wouldn't have to come up with basically that community of 116 households plus the nursery school is going to need $4 to $5 million. That's the and they're trying to get that money together, but that's the concern.
Okay, so question for the patron. So with what you just said, the water level won't rise unless the golf courses stop watering. Is that what we're?
And that could be and so let me just say, we don't know what DEQ is going to do with their golf course permit. but it could very well be that the golf course permit is stopped when theirs comes up. But whether or not it gets stopped, this will give the community an extra 3 years. It's very complicated, and I have 3 folks here from the community that can make a much better, can explain it a lot better for you, I think. And if you have any questions afterwards.
All right, any other questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah, and I guess the way I understand this is that it's really a matter of timing, right? And so, based in state law, human consumption comes first, and then you have other uses that come next. That the problem is that the permit for the community is coming up sooner than the permit renewal for your other users. And so by passing this bill, we basically kind of reorder it so that you first go ahead and assess the commercial users. And if there still is a problem, you're going to have to deal with that permit. But you wait until later to go ahead and see whether you need to pull the trigger on requiring the residential community to find an alternative. Is that an accurate assessment?
That's pretty accurate. The main thing is this does not make any changes to the commercial. That's up to DEQ. It has nothing to do with the community here. It's not going to affect it. It's just that we want to have the priority, make sure that the commercial, if it's necessary, that their taps are closed first before the community, as per the code.
Follow-up question.
Yeah, and I guess follow-up question, and maybe VDH can weigh on this, is my understanding, so even if the community had to close down its drinking water supply, its consolidated drinking water supply, every single residential property in that community would still have a right to sink an individual well. And so that would be really expensive. We'd be kind of forcing them into doing that. But ultimately, your water withdrawal is going to be about the same.
That's one option. That's one option. Obviously, you need to draw 300,000 gallons per month to be able to need a DEQ permit. And so if you're doing it individually, it might even be 2 houses with 1 well or something like that. So they would be below the permit number. Okay. But it's a lot. The topography is difficult. The way it's kind of hilly in there and it's tucked away, and some of the people would have to go across. Cross over to get into their property. It's not an easy. It's just really not it's a difficult situation, and so this is just to give them a little bit more time. And I think you'll get with John maybe can come up here and Rob, you guys can explain it even better than I can.
All right, any other questions? Yes, sir, Delegate Runyon.
Question of the patron, Mr.
Yes.
Chair. So is there a municipal option?
Yeah, there is like I said, there's Fairfax County Water is an option, and it would cost about $4 or $5 million to hook up to that, to get going. It's not the annual cost. It's the original. I mean, because they have their own, they're drawing, they've got their own piping, and it's not maybe up to county code. It's not as accessible or easy to get to. But that's a good question for John and for Glenda and Rob. They can tell you, because I asked that same question.
All right. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah.
How many houses are you talking about?
We're talking about 116 plus a nursery school.
160?
16, yeah. 116 houses.
All right, any other questions from the committee? All right, if not, then we'll take people speaking in favor of the bill.
Thank you. My name is John Culbertson. I live in the Talksmont community, and thank you for the opportunity to speak in favor of this bill. And I also want to thank the Virginia legislature, because apparently you all have the foresight and have taken the initiative to tackle the state's water resource challenges, I think, ahead of many other states and other jurisdictions. And it's been said that the statute currently prioritizes groundwater withdrawal for human consumption over other uses. It's been asked a couple of times, so I'll repeat. We serve 116 homes and a preschool. We are and have been prudent stewards of this precious resource. We've got the data to back it up. We use 15% less per home on average than the average for the county each county single-family dwelling. And our withdrawals have gone down over time. Our average withdrawals over the last 5 years are less than the last 10 years, which were less than the last 20, less than the last 30, and so forth. So we share this aquifer, or compete as you might think of it, with two other larger users who use it either solely or predominantly for aesthetic irrigation purposes. One of these is the golf course that's to the north of us, and they typically draw about twice as much a year as we do, 14 to 15 million gallons, and this is strictly to irrigate the golf course. And over the last 6 years, there have been occasions where they withdrew 21 million gallons, again about 3 times our annual, over several months during the summer. There was another year where they withdrew 26 million gallons over a several-month period in the summer. Again, that's almost 4 times what we withdraw in a year. If and when they would have to switch to municipal water, they would be in pretty good shape. Their clubhouse and other facilities are already hooked up to Fairfax Water. They have over 1,000 members, and they generate annual revenues of about $12 to $14 million. The other large user in our area is the Mount Vernon Estate, and I want to focus on the new library. And also want to say I'm proud of Mount Vernon. I grew up in the Mount Vernon area, and I'm happy to say that I live there. About 10 years ago, the Mount Vernon Estate withdrew about the same amount as our community, about 7 million gallons. In that 10-year period, it's almost doubled. They built a new library in 2013, and now the library itself, for irrigation purposes, withdraws 8 million gallons a year, which again compares to our 7 million gallons just for human consumption. And they're also in pretty good shape if and when they would have to switch to municipal water. They have Fairfax water mains that border their property. They report receiving over 1 million visitors each year. Their annual income over the last 5 years has averaged just shy of $60 million. We, of course, are in a different situation. Mount Vernon Estate, if you look at their financial reports, brings in, on average, over the last 5 years, $60 million. Yeah. So they're well funded. For us, a preliminary estimate from Fairfax Water to hook up is at a minimum $40,000 per household. That's a tough hit on most households, including ours. And, we've been prudent and successful in maintaining our capital reserve fund to maintain our existing waterworks, but this is an order of magnitude that far exceeds that. So, what this bill would do if it became law would, it's not an open-ended commitment. If and when the other users are off of the system, it would give the aquifer a chance to recharge, give us an opportunity to monitor, is the water level coming up? If it does, that's great. We won't need to discontinue our system. If it's only coming up partly, we'd be able to see, okay, within X period of time, it's going to come back up. One technical point to kind of clarify some of the questions you had is all 3 of the permittees, Mount Vernon Estate, Talksmont, the Country Club, the aquifer is being drawn down. And what DEQ says is if the water level, DEQ says when your permit comes time for renewal, for all 3 of us, you'll have to raise your pumps up equal to the top of the aquifer. So if your static water level is down here and your water pump is down here now and you have to pull it up here, you're going to be sucking air. So when Mount Vernon Estate and the Country Club's permits come up for renewal about 2 years before ours, they'll know whether they're going to be sucking air and have to connect to municipal water or not. They don't have geophysical logs to know where the top of their aquifers are. One of their permits requires that they have to make that determination, and those deadlines for them that make that determination of where the top of the aquifer is on their well sites has passed, so that presumably is known. We already had a driller's well log, so they determined where the top of the aquifer for us and where our pumps were, and so that's why we have some foresight to knowing what we're looking at when our permit expires, comes up for renewal. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in favor of this.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, a question. Perhaps you know, what charges the aquifer?
What the aquifer extends from roughly Great Falls, McLean area, all the way down to Virginia Beach. It extends as far west as I-95, so that's where the strata kind of comes to the surface, where groundwater and rainwater would recharge, and then it works its way down through that strata to the point where the well holes are.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
So your data, you're saying that the charging of the aquifer is remaining the same over the years. It's just that the usage has increased, which has outpaced the charging
the
of
recharge
the aquifer.
rate. Yes. Yeah, and again, 7 million gallons a year for us, 14 to 21 million gallons for the golf course, 8 million gallons for the library. So much more is being withdrawn for those others for irrigation purposes than ours. And the presumption is the aquifer will recover at some point. Whether that'll happen soon enough to raise the water level up to the top of the aquifer at us remains to be seen. But at least if it does, great. If it doesn't, then it at least gives us time to monitor it and come up with and prepare for alternative sources.
All right. Any other questions for the witness?
No, I'll wait. You know what? I'll wait till the testimony is done.
Yeah.
In the interest of time, Mr. Chairman, the others don't need to testify, I don't think, unless you have any other questions.
All right. All right. Thank you, Delegate Weber.
Yeah, I have a question. I guess for the gentleman who was just up here, you'd mentioned that, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you a question. I didn't realize you were done. I thought you were going to give everybody else. Well, I appreciate that. So you'd mentioned that it was going to cost roughly $40,000 a household to hook up to Fairfax County water.
Correct.
How does that work with Fairfax County? Is that a lump sum that you need to immediately fork over, or can that be paid back over time?
Either. Either lump sum up front is the presumptive, no challenges way to do it. There is the concept of a special tax district that may be applied. But if you think about it, essentially you're going to be adding the equivalent in tax payments of working off a $40,000 mortgage for each property to be able to amortize that cost through a special tax district.
All right. Thank you.
All right. I think if DEQ, if we could have some clarity on this, I'd really like to ask some questions to them. Director Rolband, welcome.
Thank you. I'm Mike Rolband, Director DEQ.
So,
pardon?
Yes, if you could explain some of the aquifer and the challenges that this particular area has, that would be warrant code.
Sure. First of all, the administration has no position on this bill. But to answer your technical questions, our staff's position in terms of their analysis is that if this went through, even if we denied the extension of the permits for the golf courses and Mount Vernon Estates, they're not sure if the aquifer would rebound. So that's number one question. Their concern is that the aquifer rate of withdrawal has exceeded the recharge for many, many years, so it's been dropping precipitously, and it may or may not be able to recharge. There's a lot more impervious area in Fairfax County in that watershed than there was in 1940, and thus the recharge rates are much lower. So that's their concern.
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Bowman.
Two quick questions for Director Rolband. I guess with respect to the other users, is it likely that those permits would not be extended, I guess, under the current circumstance?
They have not made a determination right now. In their last permit renewal, they were required to do the geophysical logging that you heard about, and I'm told it's been done in 2021, and they've raised their pumps accordingly. in their next permit cycle, they'll have to give us alternatives for other sources of water or other techniques they'll use to limit that withdrawal rate.
Gotcha.
So we haven't done that analysis because they haven't applied.
Gotcha. But I guess, Mr. Chairman, they're in the same boat as the community with respect to having to make some kind of change.
Correct.
And I guess my next question is, so let's say, and I think I heard this correctly, that the other two users disconnect, the aquifer doesn't rise, then the community's not off the hook. That they're still going to have to disconnect. What we're doing is just providing, I guess, number one, an opportunity for sequencing, so that if it does come up, this is drinking water for human consumption. But if it doesn't go back up, it's just a matter of timing to allow the community to figure out what is their alternative, right? And so this is not permanent. This is just saying let's give them a short window.
Correct. You nailed it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Director Rollban?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. Delegate Wilt.
Possibly for the director, for anybody else, maybe knows the history. So in the testimony, we've heard several times mentioned Mount Vernon and the library, and it's indicated that that's increased. Usually, was that given consideration when the library went through the whole building process? What may be that impact on this aquifer?
Unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that. Sorry.
All right, there was someone else that had a question. Yes.
A question for the director. All right, so you had mentioned that the aquifer is not replenishing as fast as it used to. What kind of combination is the fact that I guess we have numerous users and an increase in users? Because I guess from the gentleman's description, that aquifer pretty much runs the entire eastern side of the state.
Right, but in Northern Virginia, where most of the water demand is, it's now coming from Fairfax Water.
Okay.
So they have two intakes, one on the Potomac River, one in the Occoquan Reservoir. So it's surface water runoff. So they're not withdrawing. So the vast majority of the groundwater use, say pre-World War II, has been eliminated with the installation of these public water systems.
Okay. So why is it not replenishing?
Well,
is it dual uses?
The only, the only reason is just simply a combination of there is still water withdrawal occurring, and then there's an incredible amount of impervious surface now. So typically we have about 40 inches of rainfall in Northern Virginia, and roughly 15 inches runs off in surface flow on average, and the rest is infiltrated in the ground or evapotranspired. Now when it's paved, it's roughly out of those 40 inches, 39 inches runs off in the stream, and only that 1 inch is left to go into the ground or evaporate. So that's what's happened.
All right.
Okay. So a question for Director.
Favorite topic of mine.
So is there anywhere in code where we specifically do a circle around an area? I mean, the Eastern Shore has well water issues too.
Correct.
And I'm just trying to figure out.
This is unique as far as I know.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for the director?
Thank you.
All right. Delegate Krizik, last word.
Just so you know what some of those costs are, I looking at my notes. That $40,000 includes the required metering, fire hydrants on the streets, capping the 3 wells, and things like that.
I failed to ask for anyone opposed.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So before you close, let me see if anyone is opposed to the bill.
I want to be clear. This isn't necessarily opposition. I've been talking with the patron and with the clerk, Rob Bohannon, representing the Virginia Golf Course Superintendents Association. So the bill is just a little bit unclear. We're trying to figure out would it give the ability to halt or terminate, is the terminology that's used in the bill. One of our permits that, as you heard, said is it comes up in 2026. We submit quarterly. Golf courses submit quarterly logs to DEQ. All that's monitored. I wanted to say some of the things that golf courses have done too to reduce their reliance on well water. They've constructed irrigation ponds. They have put in central pumping stations, and they've removed sediment to capture offsite water. So they've been doing a lot to know that, try to make things better. Just as an example, Belhaven gave some data from 2022. Their well withdrawal was 8 million gallons. gallons. For contrast, in 2021, it was almost 18 million gallons. So that's a 10 million gallon reduction. So they are taking steps there too to reduce their water usage. And our biggest concern is don't want to do any harm to what Delegate Krizik's trying to do to help the community, but making sure that this doesn't impact the ability of a golf course to possibly renew their permit, absent this bill. If there's other factors at play, so be it. But want to make sure that this bill doesn't impact that. And that, talking to the clerk, I think the feedback was that is not in the bill.
All right, thank you. Anyone else opposed? All right, now last word.
Yeah, let me and this does not have any effect. Council can opine on that, but it will not have any effect on their process. So as I was saying, there's a lot that goes into hooking up to the county, and I hope you guys will look favorably. At least let's move this on and see what happens through the the Senate side and things like that. Maybe. Thank you.
Chairman, move to report.
All right, we have a motion properly seconded. Is there any other motion? All right, we'll move to the board. Bill fails to report 4-3. Thank you, Dylan. 5-4.
All right.
No.
Thank you.
4-5. You said 4-3.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Because that would mean it passed.
Right. Delegate Clark? Oh, I'm sorry.
He was here before me. Go ahead.
Okay.
Good
House
after-
Bill 1721.
Yes, good afternoon, members, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Today, I am introducing HB 1721, which directs the Commissioner of Health to convene a work group to study the occurrence of microplastics in the Commonwealth's public drinking water. Microplastics are defined as particles of plastic 5 millimeters in diameter or smaller, formerly used in production of cosmetics and dental products. They were outlawed in the Microbead-Free Water Act of 2015 in light of concerns that these plastics had adverse health risks to wildlife and our bodies of water. However, microplastics can be created through the slow breakdown and degradation of large plastics in our ocean and landfills without being deliberately manufactured. As plastics break down to fibers finer than human hair, these plastics can enter the food supply through the fish we eat, and particularly through shellfish. We have found microplastics in placentas during pregnancy, and lungs of surgical patients, and in the blood of blood donors. Microplastics have also been found in salt, beer, fresh fruit, and vegetables, and also drinking water. According to the research from National Geographic, many plastics are not adequately regulated in many countries, and chemicals that have been outlawed from manufacturing in the United States have still been breaking down in our oceans for decades. In 2020, this House played its part in passing HB 586, which began to study PFAS in water supplies, which is similar to 1721, which is passed, will study microplastics. The long-term health impact of microplastics is still being studied, with many scientists arguing the total adverse health risk depends greatly on the amount of microplastic exposure and the duration of ingestion. That being said, exposure to microplastics has been connected to chronic inflammation, asthma, and certain cancers. The complexity of the environment requires the study of experts to determine the presence of this chemical in our oceans and water supply, the potential health risks associated with lifelong exposure to these microplastics, and a recommendation to the General Assembly on how this concern can be addressed. And I hope it is the will of this committee to move this bill forward. And I'm glad to take any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the delegate? All right, seeing none, if anyone in the audience would like to speak in favor of the bill.
Hi, thank you. Ellie Wilson with Environment Virginia. We support this bill. I'm plastic pollution is definitely an issue within our environment. It's found at every depth of our ocean, every corner of our world. We don't know the health impacts of ingesting microplastics regularly. It's estimated that we ingest credit cards worth of microplastics in every week, which is pretty crazy. So it's definitely something that we should be studying. The Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan identifies 4 goals when dealing with plastic pollution, one of which is learning more about microplastics. So this would absolutely do that. So we support the bill.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jay Ford with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. We also support this bill for similar reasons. Again, this was laid out in the Marine Debris Removal Plan that I believe was made available to all of you. And, generally this falls under the good information to have category. As we continue to study microplastics and what the impact is, it's going to be useful information to know what we have in the water supply. So we hope you'll support this. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And next?
Chair Bloxham, members of the committee, Chris Lane, Virginia League of Conservation Voters. For the reasons explained by the patron and offered by Environment Virginia and Chesapeake Bay Foundation, we at the Virginia League of Conservation Voters also support this bill.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, Virginia Conservation Network supports this bill and appreciates the delegate for bringing it.
All right, thank you. Anyone else in favor of the bill? Oh, I have one online. Ms. Mattson?
Thank you. Tyler Madison with the Sierra Club, and we support the bill. Microplastics, as you've heard, are easily ingested by humans. They can be broken up into nanoplastics, which are not even visible by the naked eye. They can cause health risks, which include human immune system risks and cellular health risks. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And those to speak against the bill?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Mike Carlin again on behalf of the Virginia Manufacturers Association. Our take on the bill is that really it should be, I think, the professionals first that look at this issue at DEQ. We don't believe an expansive effort of this kind is appropriate at this time or would be productive. We think a good look at it from the professional staff ought to come first and then make decisions after that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Where would one come into contact with the microplastics? Would it be, like, for instance, I drink well water. Would it be in an individual's well, or is it in public water systems? Is it airborne? Yeah. Is it in processed food? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Just about anywhere. So we've been doing testing with Environment America across the country on microplastics, and they're found in just about every single waterway. So currently, yes, in our drinking water, they are found in our food chain. Basically, absolutely everywhere we're finding microplastics. To the degree that we are, especially with drinking, with our, we do have filtration. We don't currently know exactly how much we are even ingesting, but just about everything we ingest now has plastic in it.
All right. Fowler, have another question? Delegate Bulova.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and mostly just a comment. I think we all remember a couple years ago we dealt with the issue of micro beads, and just to kind of refresh your memory, those are small beads of plastic that were purposely introduced into cosmetics and create a real problem because they are so small and so light that they often don't get taken out of the treatment process. And I guess we were lucky at that point that the federal government, the Congress, recognized the issue and they went ahead and banned the use of those micro beads. This is a related and probably more serious problem because you're dealing with the issue of plastics that break down into smaller and smaller pieces And so it is pervasive in the environment, has the same kind of concerns that microbeads do, in that a lot of small species will go ahead and think it's food, they'll digest it, and they'll go ahead and die. And of course, you can imagine that's not great when people go ahead and ingest that as well. This is something that the Chesapeake Bay Commission had looked at. We requested the Scientific and Technical Advisory Committee to look at this as an issue. And they did a pretty good job of kind of looking at, what was out there. But their big conclusion was we're lacking data, important data, in order to be able to take the next steps on appropriate management. And so I guess the way I see it is this is a great bill that would allow Virginia to take the lead on what I think is a really important issue for the region. And for those reasons, I hope we take that opportunity to take a leadership position.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just so I understand, Delegate Clark, this is not any kind of legislation. We're simply asking for a study.
That's correct.
To determine what the effects of the microplastics are, any health hazards, anything like that.
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for the patron? All right. I guess I have a question to Director Rollband, I guess. On DEQ, or I don't know if you have this answer or not. I don't know if do we have a study of drinking water from our municipalities?
I'm hoping someone from the Department of Health is here.
There we go. They do drinking water.
Okay. Yes, sir. Welcome.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. I'm Dwayne Roadcap with the Virginia Department of Health Office of Drinking Water. And there is a physical impact that's associated with the bill, so I would just point that out. That the study would have an associated cost. The administration does not have a position on the bill.
Has there been some, have you all looked at the microplastics that are going through the public water?
So generally speaking, drinking water is regulated at the federal level with the U.S. EPA. And to date, the U.S. EPA has not engaged in regulating microplastics. The only state of which we're aware where they have done some investigation on microplastics is in California, and the fiscal impact statement speaks to those costs that are associated with that.
Okay. Delegate Runyon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question of the director. So you said that the federal government has not regulated yet. Have they studied this issue?
Not extensively. So it is an emerging concern and an emerging contaminant of concern. There's a lot of things in plastic that we're ingesting that you heard earlier, and so there more investigation and study is certainly needed so that we can better understand the potential health impacts. But at the federal level, they haven't engaged in regulating that.
Okay, but they have engaged in studying it.
To my knowledge, EPA has not done any significant studies to move forward with regulating the contaminant.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Delegate Lopez, did you?
No, it's okay.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, I was just looking up what the fiscal impact statement was. It's approximately $100,000, and I was just wondering if that was excessive or overly problematic for the Department of Health to actually pursue a study, because it was $100,000. And then I was also looking up the studies that the EPA had done, and also the outside studies that have been done by academic institutions across the country, including Ivy League institutions, and they find that it's a fairly significant problem. And the fact that this is such a de minimis amount of money, it seems like it's a no-brainer. But that would have been my comment, not my question.
All right, thank you, Delegate Lopez. Any other questions for the patron? Anyone else? All right, last word.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to share that this study will allow us to bring the experts together to make sure that we have the best data possible so we can start legislating around this issue. We have heard today that plastics are in just about everything that we digest, and it is of a great health concern for our Commonwealth. So I just hope that it'll be the pleasure of this body to move this forward. Thank you.
All All right, and I would footnote that if we act favorably, I would say that this would probably have to go to appropriations. Is there an amendment that ties to this, Delegate Clark?
Yes, I do have a fiscal impact statement and a budget amendment.
You do have you have requested a budget amendment for this, okay?
Mr.
Right.
Chairman,
Yes, Delegate Bova.
I would move to report and refer to appropriations.
All right, so the House Bill 1721, to do a study, has been properly seconded to report and refer. All those in favor will go to the voting board. Bill fails on a 4-5 vote. All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Delegate Tran.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I have House Bill 2209 in front of you. Hopefully we can all agree that clean, safe water is essential to public health and the well-being of our environment and wildlife. And driveway and pavement sealants that are used to cover the top of asphalt to extend the life of a driveway or parking lot can affect the quality of water. Some driveway sealants contain high levels of toxic polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, PAHs. They are a known carcinogen, and sealants with high PAH have prominent public health implications, particularly for children. Studies have shown that residences adjacent to parking lots with high PAH seal coats have 25 times higher in toxin load than that of residents not adjacent to these covered parking lots. And in fact, people who live near those lots where with high PAH sealants have shown to have a 38 times greater likelihood of developing cancer at some point in their lives. Additionally, PAHs are also problematic for important Virginia fisheries, including oysters, fish, freshwater mussels, and more. In response to the toxins, fish develop cancers, tumors, and lesions. Oysters have reduced spat set and fertilization, and mussels have reduced survivorship. There have been several examples of PAH toxicity in wildlife in Virginia, including the Elizabeth River and the Clinch River. The Chesapeake Bay program has prioritized PAHs as one of the most important toxic contaminants to the bay that we need to be paying attention to. And VDOT, recognizing this, has actually stopped using high PAH products when they seal and pave our streets and roads. This bill this year gives localities the option to restrict the use of high pH sealants within their jurisdictions, and local choice is important. It's not a statewide mandate like we've talked about in the past, but giving localities the option is another tool they can use. And then we've seen that in some cities that have a local option and have exercised it, there's been a drastic decline in some of these issues. So I hope that you will vote favorably upon this bill and give localities this option.
Delegate Tran, that was exactly my question. So the difference between this year and last year, being the road warrior that you are.
Yes, sir. I'm persistent. Go ahead.
The local option.
Yes, sir.
Not statewide. So each locality would have their own.
Yes. They would put in after July 1, 2023, they'd have the option to put in a local ordinance. Anything on the shelf can remain on the shelf. You just can't sell new stuff after 2024.
Okay, and one more question. The way I read the bill was if one locality bans it, does it ban it statewide?
Now, that was not our intent.
Okay,
I can ask council to weigh in.
Okay, that's just kind of the way I read it. That one locality would ban it statewide, but that's fine. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay. All right, anyone to speak in favor of the bill? Come forward, please.
Thank you, sir. My name is James House. I'm an environmental toxicologist. I'm also board certified in human health toxicology. I'm here to support the bill. This product is PAHs, polyaromatic hydrocarbons, in high levels. It causes cancer in fish, aquatic organisms. Also, children play on pavements and can get substantial exposure just from playing on the pavement that's been treated. There's also there are replacement products that are already on the market that are cost competitive and efficacious. So there's really no need for this product. And again, this is not a statewide ban, but a locality issue. I also believe, I'm not positive, but I think all the other states that contribute to the Chesapeake watershed have banned this product statewide.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? All right. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Chair Blocks and members of the committee. We at the Virginia League of Conservation Voters also support this local option for a city or a county to choose to require asphalt-based sealants, a commonly used alternative to the high PAH containing sealants. And though I'm not a toxicologist, so I'm going to hope that he fact checks me, I want to your point earlier, Delegate, we'll go into a little bit of why do we care about polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. And these are basically they're flat reactive discs, like polycyclic bunch of circles, that are formed when hydrocarbons like wood, gas, etc. burn. And the reason that this is important is that when they get inside us, they sort of react with stuff inside our cells and DNA, sort of like a chop saw going through a ladder. And when that chop saw comes in contact with DNA or something that controls how fast a cell divides or alters how it grows, gets rid of some of those controls, what happens is that's what leads to cancer, and that's what makes this so dangerous. PAHs are also include naphthalene, which you guys know of as the chemical in mothballs. And the reason that we have so much, the reason that this impacts children, so the 0 to 6, and it impacts oysters and fish, is because small children are growing. Their cells are dividing and replicating a lot more than like us older folks here. And mussels and fish don't have the complex immune system and sort of controls and defense mechanisms that we have. So that's why those populations are really susceptible. I want to sort of close my remarks to highlight something that Delegate Tran said. So going back to the beginning, 2006, this is a story about Texas, not California. So I know we've had that happen, but Austin, Texas was the first place where a local prohibition on these high pH sealants was enacted. And according to a study of the U.S. Geological Survey, they basically went in to a lake near the city and they drilled cores in the lake. And they had data over time showing just how much of this PAH was building up in the lake. Until this ban was enacted, the PAH concentration was increasing in that lake for 40 years. After this ban was enacted, they saw a 58% reversal from 2006 to 2014. I think that this is a really good bill where we have demonstrated and recognized health impacts that we can help localities have the option to keep out of their waterways. And I'm happy to be here asking you to be not like California, but today to be like Texas and allow localities the option to control this substance. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Tom Dunlap from the James River Association, and thank you. I need to be a little bit taller for me. Thank you. I won't reiterate many of the great claims that have already been made by those before me, but I'll just add to those points that these pavement sealants, they degrade over time on scales of 1 to 5 years, just as regular pavement sealants do. And they, in the process, they come off as a fine dust, and that's what's working its way, toxin-laden dust, into homes nearby and running off into waterways. Laboratory studies have shown that this runoff is also toxic to aquatic wildlife, not just immediately, but for several months afterwards. And I think I'll just wrap up and say that I think the case study from Austin, Texas, that Chris was mentioning just a second ago really showcases that local efforts can have local impacts on water quality, and they really do work. Thank you, Delegate Tran, for bringing this forth.
All right, next.
Mr. Chairman, Chris Sigler with Fairfax County.
our public works staff is very interested in taking a hard look at this bill once it passes as far as implementing it. Our staff shares a lot of the concerns that you've heard here today and the concerns that Delegate Tran mentioned about this substance. The really nice thing about this bill is that it doesn't mandate any locality to do anything. And I'm not here promising that Fairfax County would enact legislation like this, but we do want to take a good close look at it and consider implementing something like this. So we appreciate that it's optional local authority.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, Pat Calvert, Virginia Conservation Network. There are accessible, affordable alternatives to this. It's good for everybody, and certainly support it. I hope you will as well.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'll round us out quickly. Patrick Fanning with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. We also support the bill. This is a permissive locality by locality approach, and we hope you'll pass it. Thank you.
All right. And those speaking against the bill, please. All right.
Oh my gosh, Mr. Chair, I just want to say I think you're right. I think there was an unintended two amendments we would need so that we get the bill in the proper intention, so that it is not one locality affecting the whole Commonwealth. But I would offer on line 57 instead of to strike the word Commonwealth and replace that with locality, and to do the same on line 61, so that the locality can ban it within their own locality.
So moved.
All right, so those two line amendments have been properly put before us and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. So I guess I would say this to the bill. So now, how would you know if I'm a contractor in what locality I can use a product or not?
I would, maybe if Chris from Fairfax could answer how a locality, if you were to pass an ordinance, would implement that.
So Mr. Chairman, if we were looking to adopt an ordinance, we would have a pretty robust public process where all folks could come in and talk about the bill. So I think we would do some public outreach if we were going to pass an ordinance, so folks knew that in fact this was the law in Fairfax County. I don't think we would hide that fact. We'd publicize it so that folks knew.
Okay, thank you. Delegate Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick couple of questions here, because, again, first of all, parents in Hanover County, we love our families and their children just as much as folks in Fairfax County does. So, but again, I'm just kind of curious about if this is such peril, why do we not have a statewide mandate versus in or out by individual localities? I would love to see some type of peer-reviewed studies from DEQ or the State Water Control Board or the EPA, but I don't see anything, but anyway, so I'm just kind of having a little bit of trouble here trying to find a way to support this.
Mr. Chairman, I would respond to the delegate by saying we did try a statewide ban last year that didn't go over so well, so we thought we'd take the locality by locality approach. But there has been studies that have been completed. I was just looking at a few that was published by the National Institutes of Health, for example. But I think that that was a larger conversation at this year's Chesapeake Bay Commission meeting about various studies that have been completed in the area. There have been other states that have used that data to ban, have a statewide ban, Maryland, for example. But we know that that's not kind of the position we're in, and so we're hopeful that locality by locality can have this conversation as to how it best affects their constituents.
Any other questions? All right, last word.
I hope you vote favorably for this bill this year.
Okay.
I think a lot has been said.
All right, we motion.
Move to table.
All right, so we have a motion. Do we have another motion?
Alternate motion, move to table.
Substitute motion?
Yeah, substitute motion, Mr. Chairman. Move to table the bill.
All right, so A superior motion has been put forward to lay the bill on the table. House Bill 2209 will go to the voting board. All right, that bill fails on a 4-5 motion. The motion to lay the bill on the table fails. So we will go to the other motion to report. We'll go to the voting board. As amended. All right. Bill reports out with as amended 5-4.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. Any other patrons in the room? All right. So we'll go with Delegate Bolivar, House Bill 1632.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm just going to briefly describe my bill, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn over any additional remarks to Delegate Runyon, since the bills are generally in conformance with what they're trying to do. But back in 2016, the General Assembly went about merging the Stormwater Management Act and the Erosion and Sediment Control Act with the idea that really you're dealing with a continuum of development, right? And so one of them deals with what happens when you're developing the site. The other one is how do you control runoff after the site is developed. So it made a good deal of sense. For a variety of reasons, the regulations to actually implement that have been in development since that time. And the problem is that the way that the law was originally passed, once those regulations do get promulgated, our localities would only have 30 days to actually update and implement their local ordinances, which is way too short of a time when you're dealing with a complicated subject like that. And so really, the basis of this is that my understanding from Director Rollband is that we are finally going to get those regulations adopted this summer. And what these bills do is make sure that localities have a year, so July 1, 2024, to actually adopt and implement their local ordinances. That's what my bill does. But like I said, Mr. Chairman, would be happy to go ahead and defer to Delegate Runyon.
Delegate Runyon, and your bill, House Bill 2390.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The delegate did a great job explaining both bills, and so they are essentially identical. We do have folks here from DEQ if they wish to offer any additional information. But what's important to recognize, this bill is an alignment bill. It puts, the first time in a long, long time, we have an opportunity to align our stormwater programs in sync with federal regulation. Over a decade, it says. And it also reduces regulatory burden on the folks of the Commonwealth.
All right. Thank you, Delegate Runyon. Anyone to speak in favor of the bills?
I think you know me now. But I just want to say, number one, this is an administration bill, and we strongly support it. Not only is it going to consolidate the stormwater and the erosion control regs, which we're in track to advertise hopefully in March and have a June public hearing at the State Water Control Board. This also allows the localities time to get there, as Delegate Bolivar and Runyon said, to change their ordinances in the 1 year. But we also have a federal permit that comes due every 5 years. We're going to be reissuing that July 1st, 2024 by federal law. And I want to have one set of regulations to refer into that permit, so we don't have to have two different time periods going on. We also we're creating a new stormwater handbook right now. We have a SAG of 60 people. We're going to finish that at the end of 2023 and adopt it in advance effective July 1st, 2024. And we have a new runoff reduction model update to meet the Bay model. Same thing, Virginia Tech's doing that. We're going to have everything adopted and effective the same day. So July 1st, 2024, for the first time in my career, all the stuff will be in sync. And I retired twice.
All right, thank you.
Pardon me?
Did you look tired because of it?
It's exciting, though. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members, Chris Pomeroy representing the Virginia Municipal Stormwater Association. I want to thank Delegate Runyon and Delegate Bolivar for identifying this implementation issue and providing an additional year's time. It's been a 7-year effort at DEQ. It is actually a very complex weaving together of 4 different statutory programs that we now need to replicate at the local level. So it's still going to be tight, but a year is much better than no time at all. So we appreciate the bill and support it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone to speak against the bill? Hearing none, I think, if I'm not correct, Delegate Bolivar, you are chief co-patron on House Bill 2390.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so I'll take a motion on House Bill 1632.
Mr. Chairman, I move to table.
Do we have a second? All right, so House Bill 1632 is being moved to table. All those agree with tabling the bill? That bill is gently laid on the table, 9-0. Then House Bill 2390 is before us. All right, so we have a move and seconded, House Bill 2390. We'll go. Yeah. And that bill reports 9-0. All right, thank you. Next bill up, we'll go to House Bill 2060. And we've seen something similar to this, Delegate Lopez. If you could explain the differences between this year and last year.
Yes, I'd like to make an amendment, Mr. Chairman. At the request of several advocates, if we could go to line 19 and change 250 gallons to 1,320 gallons.
All right, there is a proposed amendment. Let me pull it up here on line
19, sir.
Line 19. On line 19, to move the storage capacity from 250 gallons to 1,250?
1,320.
1,320.
And then on page 3, line 122 and 123, you could cut small I, and then on line 124 or line 123, change that to 1I or I, little I, and then 124, change 1,000 gallons to 1,320 gallons.
All right, does Elias staff, are we good? Okay. So if we have a motion to accept the amendments.
So moved.
Do we have a second? Yes. All right. All in favor of those? Signify by saying aye. So now we have the bill before us as amended. Delegate Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Virginia has no legislation in place that tracks the location or inventory of large chemical above-ground storage tanks, though DEQ does have an inventory and database for oil storage tanks. These tanks have the potential to cause a great deal of damage and harm to local communities. We saw what the PFAS, just a small amount of PFAS, did to the area outside of Roanoke. DEQ's own database of spills shows more than 4,800 chemical spills from tanks between 2000 and 2020, about 230 per year. A DEQ, DOH, and DEM report mandated by the General Assembly concluded that there were gaps in Virginia's regulation of chemical storage tanks, and we needed a framework for inventorying and registering a defined universe of chemical storage facilities and inventory of materials. 10 other states are already doing this, including West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Florida. As we all know, a 2014 chemical spill in Charleston, West Virginia strongly highlights the need for action. Toxic chemicals leaked from corroded tanks and contaminated the city's water supply for more than a week while their General Assembly session was in session. Our rural communities cannot afford to take the hits, whether economic or public health related, for mistakes like these. My bill, HB 2060, establishes a new program for the registration of chemical storage tanks in the Commonwealth. The program would parallel Virginia's existing database and inventory for oil storage tanks. The program is fully privatized. No new revenue should be needed. It's funded by reasonable fees for tank registration from $50 to the smallest tanks to $600 for the largest tanks in the Commonwealth. Exemptions are all tanks on a farm, tanks that contain non-hazardous substances like water, milk, or food products, oil tanks, and tanks in the natural gas industry. The 1,320-gallon threshold was chosen because it parallels federal Clean Water Act requirements and Virginia code requirements for oil tanks. I think this is a common sense information disclosure bill. It's aimed at building a simple registry so we can get a handle on the number and content of these tanks. It's much more simple than the 2020 version of this legislation, and it has far fewer requirements than what Virginia currently imposes on oil tanks. It imposes no substantive mandates on who can build a tank, where they can build a tank, or construction and operation requirements. It does not require any inspections or new equipment. Ultimately, communities across Virginia should have the right to be able to have this information at their disposal. If our state starts tracking potentially hazardous storage tanks, I believe that every Virginian benefits. And as I alluded to, Mr. Chairman, this is not it's not as many mandates as what the oil tanks have, but let's be honest, the chemicals that are in these storage tanks, these above ground storage tanks, are much more dangerous, I think, than oil. And we've seen what can happen when these tanks become corroded and fail. And it can be devastating for a community, and it can be devastating for the economic development of a community. It can be devastating for the public health. And so all we're looking for is a straight inventory, as we've been told to do by a report that we requested. So I hope it's the will of the committee to pass the bill.
Any questions for the patron? I guess I do have a question. How many tanks do we think is out there with this type of money tied to it? Do we have a clue? Delegate Lopez.
It changes every year.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for the patron? Yes, Delegate Weber.
All right. So question, what would be a good example in the Commonwealth of Virginia of a tank that would need to be registered?
Well, any of the 4,800 tanks that had chemical spills in Virginia between 2020, any of those could be an example.
Further question?
Sir. Delegate Weber.
So, I mean, I guess my question is, can you give, so for instance, those chemical spills, like what, I'm trying to figure out a company that would have something, because when you start doing your above ground tanks and then you start doing the exemptions that are in the first paragraph, trying to wrap my head around, you know what I mean? Like what kind of company would have a tank that would then need to be registered, minus all the exceptions that are in the bill?
Any kind of chemical companies, any company that has any of the PFAS materials, the 6,000 PFAS materials that are covered in the state by the feds and the EPA. So, I'm not going to call out any specific industry right now or specific company.
All right. Thank you. Delegate Runyon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question of the patron. So, Delegate, you mentioned the so many spills within the Commonwealth since 2020, I think?
Between 2000 and 2020.
Okay, so in 20 years it was 4,800 spills. And were those spills due to deterioration of the tanks or the piping, or were they spills due to the folks not handling it correctly?
It really depends.
Right. So you don't know?
Well,
do we know how many tanks actually have failed in that 20-year period? As opposed to a human error.
Could have been both, but I will say that we do know that several of the tanks were corroded and did fail on their own.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the patron? Okay, anyone in favor of the bill?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Peggy Sander, Chesapeake Bay Foundation. We support the bill. We thank the patron for bringing it to help Virginia prepare against any serious problem related to spills from these tanks. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Tom Dunlap from the James River Association. We also would like to thank the patron for bringing forth this legislation. We think having a inventory of these above-ground storage tanks is crucial for public health and for making sure that our environment stays safe in the light of catastrophic weather events and increased flooding in all parts of Virginia. So thank you.
Mr. Chair, Pat Calvert, Virginia Conservation Network. Appreciate the delegate bringing this important bill forward. I think part of the question is we don't know because a lot of these things aren't regulated, and this would be a step forward towards doing that.
Okay, thank you. And anyone here to speak against the bill?
Mr. Chairman, Brad Copenhaver on behalf of the Virginia Agribusiness Council. We've opposed this concept in years past as well. We appreciate the agriculture exemption, and I haven't had a chance to fully digest the amendments discussed today. The Agribusiness Council doesn't just represent farmers. We also represent agribusiness companies, such as crop protection companies, lawn care companies who would fall under this as well. Our position is, and we are opposed to the bill, our position is that because these products are regulated at the federal level, we're trying to avoid kind of a patchwork of state regulations, and keeping Virginia in line with what's already going on at the federal level is our preference. So we do oppose the bill. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And next?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee, Mike Carlin again on behalf of the Virginia Manufacturers Association. We also oppose the bill for the reasons just given, but also I think there are potential security concerns with some of these tanks, and knowing where they are, having a registry might not be a very good idea in terms of security and safety of some of these facilities and tanks. So for those reasons, we oppose. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else in the audience who would like to speak against? Online, we have Mr. Hobie Vaughn.
Good afternoon, members of the subcommittee. For the reasons that have been already given, we're also concerned about this bill and are in opposition. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions about the bill? Delegate Lopez?
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the support and the conversations and the work that we've done over the years with the academics and the folks from business as well. Because of that, we exempted tanks on farms. We're basically following the 1,320 gallon level, which is what is in the Federal Clean Water Act requirements, and it actually is the same thing as the Virginia Code requirements for oil tanks. And so we can also put up guardrails through DEQ to address any security concerns as well. We are really behind the game in terms of addressing this, especially considering the fact that the report that we requested asked us to do this several years ago. And so I think it's high time we finally pass this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, the committee works off motions.
Mr. Chairman, I have a substitute motion.
Substitute motion.
I move that we lay the bill on the table.
All right, the spirit of motion is to lay the bill on the table. That motion passes. The bill's laid on the table 5-4.
Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you. All right, and is this the last bill? Delegate Runyon has House Bill 2496.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Virginia Recycling and Development Center, this is a market-based recycling opportunity. And to be frank about it, it's been a long journey because there's been a lot of conversation about how to make this work throughout the folks that are involved in the industry. So I want to thank the various stakeholders, including the administration, for working with us to bring this bill to where it is. So excuse me, the goal of the center to create this development center is to improve recycling rates, reduce solid waste, and support a more circular economy leading to. So we would form an advisory committee, conduct studies and publish data, issue grants to local governments to improve recycling infrastructure, and make state policy recommendations. It is in supporting recycling. So I'm trying to remember, was there a technical amendment to be issued? Yes, she's shaking her head. So would you all report that, please?
Mr. Chairman, we needed to do a substitute for this bill. It was not drafted by DLS, and there were just a couple little technical things that we wanted to clean up for the delegate. So just technical.
The whole bill, but technical. So we're
The
moving to
polish that
substitute.
was given to it, it was all technical.
All right, all right, so we have a motion and a second to accept the substitute. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, so the substitute polished version is in front of us now.
And I do appreciate staff polishing the version. As again, this has been an exciting journey of length. And so, but I believe we're in a good posture now. I think we do have a couple of folks here today that would like to speak to the bill.
All right, we'll take those now. All those in favor, or what? Delegate Weld has a question.
All those in favor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just wondering, is there a fiscal impact to this legislation?
If there was a fiscal impact, it's not on IHOB.
Yeah, I did not believe that it was.
All right, at this time, Delegate Runyon will take everyone that's in favor of the bill.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee, I'm Mike Carlin on behalf of the Coalition for Consumer Choices. It's a coalition of about 10 statewide associations, 5 chambers of commerce across the state who strongly support recycling solutions. Our vision for Virginia and the things that we're working toward is to have Virginia in the top tier of states in their recycling capability and investment. We think this bill is really essential as a basis for which to begin that process, really organize it, and move us forward on the goals that we want to achieve in the area of recycling. So for those reasons, Mr. Chairman, we support the bill.
Anyone else in favor of the bill? Anyone opposed to the bill? And I think I have online. All right, I have one against. Zach Huntington, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the subcommittee. I'll start off by saying that, so I'm with Clean Virginia Waterways, and we are supporters and defenders of recycling, and we do agree that there should be more done to support recycling systems and infrastructure here in Virginia. However, this bill does not address true recycling. The bill has actually removed 2 lines that could improve recycling in Virginia. They're lines 79 and 80, which relate to recycled content incentives. So the definition of recycling is a system of reuse, perpetually keeping products in use. You can think like an aluminum can into an aluminum can, always recycled. And this should be clearly defined because Virginia's taxpayers should not be footing the bill for downcycling technologies. Grants should only be available to companies that are involved in recycling, working towards a circular economy. Circular economy, which has been mentioned, is an economic system based on the reuse and regeneration of materials or products, especially as a means of continuing production in a sustainable or environmentally friendly way. Recycling, it's the action of or process of converting waste into reusable material. A circular economy requires that this process to be repeated. The language in this bill we feel will lead to plastic to fuel production facilities, which are not recycling, they're downcycling, and they should be excluded from taxpayer funded grants. Plastics to fossil fuel production facilities, referred to by the chemical industry as advanced recycling, they've already proven to be a financial loser here in Virginia. In 2020, Virginia taxpayers provided $215,000 to Braven Environmental or a plastic to fossil fuel manufacturing facility. This facility is not being built, and it's a pattern repeated across the country. And it's my understanding that that money has not been returned. Plastics to fossil fuel facilities are still considered incineration under the Clean Air Act. These facilities also require a National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit. These are polluting and energy-intensive facilities. Contrary to what we've all been told, these facilities are not creating new plastic. They're melting plastic to be added to fossil fuels, which are later burned. This does not address the real problem. We're creating too much waste, and this is not truly recycling. There is definitely great value in researching and funding recycling initiatives that will help achieve a circular economy. And we hope it's the will of the subcommittee to pass this bill by until these concerns have been addressed. Thank you.
All right, Delegate Bolivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for Mr. Huntington, if you could, because you had raised the issue of plastics to fuel. Can you be more specific about where in the bill that concern is raised or would need to be addressed?
Yes. There's a line in the bill about promoting recycling commodities. And when we look at commodities based under Virginia State Code, these commodities can be things like naphtha. The product that Braven was going to be selling to Chevron Phillips was called Phychem. These commodities are also things like lubricants and other additives that are added mostly to diesel fuel. And when we're adding these melted plastics to diesel fuel, we don't have a circular economy. Anything that is ended by being burned is a linear system.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for that? I guess a question for DEQ is this where this? My question would be: is where who's going to house this, and who's going to pay for this?
Well, first of all, the administration has no position at this time on this bill. It's interesting the way it's written. The director of the center is appointed by the secretary, and that director will report to the secretary, but it'll be an employee of DEQ as well as the staff. We suggest there's a fiscal impact. We need to hire people to do this. So it's a little confusing the way it's structured.
Yes, thank you. Delegate Runyon. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Delegate Bolivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess the only thing I wanted to say is that there's a little bit of irony about bringing this bill back, because I do remember in 2011 we repealed Section 2.2-2667, which was the Virginia Recycling Market Development Council, which was established to do a lot of what I think you're trying to go ahead and do here. So anyways, I agree with the purpose of what you're trying to do by and large, but figured I'd go ahead and point out you just got to be careful about what boards and commissions we ultimately eliminate. The only thing I would go ahead and raise as a question to you is whether you might be open to other people participating on this particular development board or council or center, because it's a relatively small group. I think one of the beauties of the council that we had is that you included planning district commissions, VACO, VML, a broader range of stakeholders. And so I'm not going to put anybody on the spot by trying to add those now. I just wanted to get a sense of whether you'd be open to others being added either now or later.
Yeah, I would be very much open to those type things. I think we need to talk about it and decide who are the appropriate stakeholders to come in this thing. And I do appreciate the fact that in 11 we made a change, and I wasn't here. So perhaps some of you all that were there remember that. But again, the goal is to be market-based, and so we need to have those conversations. I think it would be more appropriate to have those down the road than it would be try and fix that here today.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I would just do a chairman prerogative. If we act favorably, this has to go to appropriations. There's no way we can put this type of expense without running it through appropriations.
Well, there may be another option on that. We could enact the bill with a reenactment clause and then address any other issue, related financial issues down the road next session. Would that be an option?
It could be an option. Or you could bring the bill, or you could bring the back again next year on that.
I think that given the amount of work that the various groups have put into this, I'm really serious. This bill has taken more of my time than all the other 14. And so I would appreciate it.
Okay, any other questions for the patron on this bill?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
speaking to the bill,
Yes, sir. Delegate Will.
to kind of somewhat echo Delegate Boliva's thoughts, I can't remember back that for exactly why we took those actions, other than I think data shows that recycling isn't real popular. And we like to talk a good story. You know, we collect our recyclings and so forth, but you know, the fact shows that a lot of it goes to the landfills. And so, but Mr. Chairman, I mean, this is a new day. There's new technologies. There's new things out there that, you know, quite possibly could be beneficial. So, you know, I guess I'm willing to give it another look, but I'm kind of with you. It has to go to appropriation in my estimation.
All right, any other comments? The committee works off of motions. We have a motion to report and refer.
Second.
The substitute.
Substitute.
All right. We'll go to the board. Report and refer passes 9-0. And that concludes our docket for this short session. Thank you. Committee shall rise.
That's it.